Lots of podcasters want to use the show to help them grow their business. You don't do that by rambling on for 5 minutes about a guest's background. Or maybe even worse, allowing a guest to ramble on for 5 minutes about their background. The harsh reality is, nobody really cares about where your guest went to school, about where your guest grew up, and what their family life was like.
Your podcast should be your most powerful business development tool, a trust and authority builder, and your content creation engine. Let's help your podcast help your business with the StoryTrust Media Podcast. Here's your host, John Gehring.
So one of the most popular forms of podcast episode is an interview, a guest interview. And I love guest interviews because they give you the opportunity to build trust with your audience through somebody else's expertise. It also gives you an opportunity to highlight somebody else, provide value to your guest by allowing them to borrow your audience, and ultimately have a back and forth conversation that is more engaging sometimes than just simply a solo piece like I'm doing right now. So having guests on is so important. But I want to caution you of one thing today that trips many podcasters up. And I hear this on probably 99.9% of the podcasts I listen to. This is the mistake. So you bring a guest on, and the first thing that you do is you dive into their background for the first 5 to 8 minutes of the episode, thinking, I need to introduce my audience to this guest so that this guest is more trusted by the audience and therefore is positioned as a great thought leader. Win-win all around. Wrong. Here's why. You really want to be careful to not go too deep into your guest's background in the first few minutes of the episode. Number one, when do you think the majority of people leave your podcast? The statistics are actually staggering. The majority of people who end up not finishing one of your podcast episodes end up leaving within the first 3 minutes. That's right. Most of the people who get past the first 3 minutes of your episode typically are in it for the long run and stay throughout the rest. But those first 3 minutes, that can be the killer. And in fact, we call this burn rate. A lot of podcasters find that their burn rate, when they really look into it, is very high. So they may have 1,000 downloads on one episode and they're thinking, that's pretty good. But 900 of those people are gone within the first 3 minutes. Now, that leaves you with 100 actually qualified audience members who are staying for any real length of time that matters for you to build trust with them. So how do we avoid this? One of the big mistakes I see that leads to this is going too much into a guest's background too soon. And I know the pushback is, John, we got to keep the guest comfortable, allow them to share their background, allow them to share what makes them a credible resource to give value to the audience. Wrong. The reality is, nobody cares about someone's background unless they have something for the audience member's problems, to solve their problems, to fill in a gap in their lives, to offer some solutions or tips that'll actually be actionable and beneficial in somebody's life. Now, of course, there are some exceptions to this, like when it comes to fictional podcasts or even non-fictional, say, true crime podcasts where people are there to be entertained, to be scared, whatever the case is. All right, you may have some more leeway to go into somebody's background or learn more about this very intriguing person. The other exception might be if, for some reason, you're having a podcast guest on who's like a household name. If I had Matthew McConaughey on, I mean, everybody knows who he is. People might be interested in hearing more about his background, stories that he's never told on any other media outlets or media appearances before. That might be interesting. So if the guest is a household name or people are showing up to the podcast to be entertained, then you might have some leeway there. And I could certainly listen to that argument. But usually the people who I'm working with are podcasters who want to deliver value to their audience. They want to position themselves as an expert. They want to create content that helps their audience and therefore gets them a larger following and potentially maybe even business. Lots of podcasters want to use the show to help them grow their business. And you don't do that by rambling on for 5 minutes about a guest's background. Or maybe even worse, allowing a guest to ramble on for 5 minutes about their background. The harsh reality is nobody really cares about where your guest went to school, about where your guest grew up and what their family life was like. Not unless there's a story from their past that they tell that directly leads to a point that they're making that's powerful, that's impactful, that's actionable for the listener. So avoid that early on. You want to make sure that the guest delivers value right away. Like I said, the first 3 minutes are the most important. That's when the majority of people who leave your podcast are going to leave the episode. Therefore, what matters the most in guest interviews? The first question. That's right, the first question matters the most. And too often I hear the first question being, Joe, how you doing today? Joe, tell me a little bit about how you grew up. Nobody cares. The reality is, podcasting, we think, is all about nice, casual, free-flowing conversations. And that's part of the beauty of it, is that time is less important. You do have more time to shoot the shit, as they say, right? Shoot the bull, whatever you want to say. You do have some time for that. But the reality is, you are going to lose people if you're not going to get right to the point and get right to the value that the person provides. So a short intro, absolutely fine, right? Hey, here's this guest. Susie was featured on Good Morning America for her powerful story about this and this, or Joan is a best-selling author of this book where she helps her readers through this problem. Not, back in the day, Johnny was a high school baseball player, and that inspired him to go to college here and do this and do that and take them on a long, winding journey. No, nobody cares. Nobody cares. And that first question, get into the meat of things. What's the first way that your guest can help the audience? Now, here's the beauty of this. Once you provide value in the first few minutes, once you get to the point as quickly as possible, then you have more flexibility, and then you have some time to ask them some questions about their background. So, Josie, tell me a little bit more about what your college experience was like. That's fine later in the episode. Once you've already established a connection with your listener, once the listener is committed to this episode because they're saying, oh, wow, there's value packed in here up front. Now, all of a sudden, it's okay to be more casual. But those first 3 minutes, the most important with a guest. And again, don't let them ramble on about their background. Get them to deliver value as soon as you can. And now you have a podcast episode worth listening to. I hope that helped today. Get right to the point on your next podcast episode. I know it feels unnatural. I know it feels uncomfortable to get right into it with a guest. It feels more safe to go, hey, Jack, how you doing today? Oh, good. How are you? Oh, good. Thank you. I'm just so excited for this conversation. Oh, me too. Thanks for having me on. Nothing wrong with saying any of that, but that's 30 seconds that was just wasted. That's 30 seconds that the listener just went, I could be doing this instead of listening to this episode. Yeah, I don't know. Is Jack really going to help me solve this particular problem? Don't give them that time. Get right to the value as soon as you can. And once you deliver value up front, now you have a little bit more leeway to have some fun and be more casual with it. Best of luck with your podcasting. And when it comes to guesting, it's so much fun to have those conversations. You just got to make sure, if you want to maximize the audience's attention and deliver the most value up front, that you do that within the first 3 minutes. Tighten up that guest intro, get right into the thick of things, and start delivering really high quality episodes.
Thanks for checking out the StoryTrust Media podcast. Learn more about what StoryTrust Media can do for your business and book a free consultation at storytrust.media.